Hello viewers, I am Professor Anuradha from the Department of Social Work, Sri Padmavati Mahila Vishwavidyalayam, Tirupati. Welcome to this lessons on the paper titled Working with Individuals and Family. Now we shall discuss the lesson on the use of assessment tools while working with individuals and families. This is followed by the importance of recording, and the lesson will end with the contents of an effective casework record. So as you see, this lesson is divided into 3 sections. Now we'll start with use of assessment tools. Assessment tools play a very key role while we are working with individuals and families. They are pertinent in the sense they promote collaboration between the social worker and the family unit, either be it an individual or the family system. The very advantage of these particular tools is that they are experiential in nature and they facilitate active collaboration between the social worker and the family. And the very nature of the assessment tools sets the tone for the interview and also the interventions that follow. These tools are very important in the sense they help us to set up feasible goals and also involve in interventions which are most appropriate for bringing about changes in the individual or the family system. So now let's look at the objectives of this particular lesson. On completion of this lesson, you viewers, students, should be able to explain the significance of assessment while working with individuals and families. Further, you should also be able to explain your understanding of various assessment tools that can be used during the helping process. And lastly, you should be in a position to practice these tools while you're working with individuals or families. Now let's look at these tools in detail. The first tool that we use while we are working with individuals or families is a genogram. A genogram is a very useful tool because it helps to obtain a graphic picture of a family. It has symbols and it offers information about the major events, relationships and experiences that have influenced the family over a period of time. It's a schematic diagram, and a typical genogram looks like a family tree. It provides summary of information about the family history, marriages, deaths, geographical location of family members, structure and other demographics. And an important aspect of this particular genogram is that it helps to give important information about the genealogical relationships and also other major events such as occupation, losses, family migration, dispersal, identification, role assignments and also importance of communication in the family members. And as mentioned earlier, completed genograms look somewhat like a family tree, and especially when they give information about generations. Numerous areas of practice consider genograms to be very useful, especially with older adults. When we are constructing a genogram, it gives us an opportunity for life review. The basic objective of drawing such an intergenerational map, which is usually developed by the caseworker in conjunction with the individual or the family, is to help the client and the family to gain an insight about the dynamics and functioning of the family. And it also helps to facilitate family members to express their thoughts, feelings and reactions during work, be it at the casework level or be it a family level work. And drawing a genogram is very important because it forms the basis for mutual understanding between the family and the caseworker. And it also tells us a lot about the family dynamics, and these serve as the basis for planned intervention with families or individual. For example, when a family's genogram shows a history of problems over 3 generations, as in like say for example a pattern of alcoholism, the shared experience promotes recognition of the pattern in the family. So planning how to deal with the problem follows naturally in a collaboration networking so that we can work towards accepting responsibility for change that is on part of the family members. This is an outgrowth of a shared assessment between the individual and the family. Similarly, when events are recorded on the genogram, the consequences of off-time events such as an early parental death are examined jointly, and this leads to an understanding of how it has affected the family members. Identification of cutoffs from significant family members is another characteristic of a dysfunctional family. So, recognition of this phenomenon leads to discussion of how it can be approached and resolved. This was mentioned by Mr. Holman in 1983. For further details, you can refer the genogram diagram given in your notes. Now let's go on to the EcoMap. What do we understand by an EcoMap? EcoMap is a graphical representation of a family or a client system, and as the term EcoMap itself suggests, we look at it in the ecological context. It is drawn to understand the nature and kind of relationships the individuals and the family as a unit has with other systems in the environment. EcoMaps focus on transactions and exchanges that the family maintains with other systems. While drawing the EcoMap, the family members are placed in the middle of the EcoMap as system, and the system with which the family interacts are added to the parameters of the map. The lines connecting the family to the system portray the nature of relationships that individual members and the family have with other systems in their environment, be it familiar or social systems. During the counseling sessions, or like when we are involved in our casework sessions, the EcoMap as a tool brings about active collaboration between the social worker and the clients. And when family is encouraged to participate in drawing this EcoMap, it leads to a lively and active discussion about the resources available in the environment and the nature of transactions that the family unit has with the different systems in the environment. For example, say extended family, schools, neighbors, friends, workplace, etc. If the family EcoMap shows scarcity of resources in its environment, then intervention plans are made to include a survey of people and institutions that are available to provide help. This can be followed by an active linking of resources to the family. The evaluation of a family's capacity to reach out to a person or institution to ask for and accept help is an important aspect in assessment. In some families, simply offering a referral to a resource is adequate assurance that it will be utilized. But in other families, direct involvement on part of the social worker may be required to bring about linkage and to sustain ongoing utilization. In some instances, EcoMap also leads to increased understanding and acceptance of self in the client. Thus, an EcoMap drawn and developed in conjunction with the family or the individual, especially in the early sessions, serves as effective medium to set out goals and construct a plan of action. An EcoMap is also an ideal tool to objectively demonstrate change. It can be used to portray the past and the present and as well as the future. When an EcoMap of a family unit or an individual is redrawn during the concluding session, the clients or the individual client and the family are able to gauge and evaluate the improvement brought about in the quality of the family life after the intervention sessions. Thus, an EcoMap is a very useful tool in both presenting and recording a case situation. It as a part of a case record and also in evaluating the degree of quality of change in the outcome. Having seen EcoMap and as well as Genogram, now let's move on to the family sculpture. This is another important assessment tool. During the individual or family sessions, a social worker can use this technique of family sculpting to further enrich the sessions. In literature, it has been pointed out that it is ideal to use this technique after the work on the Genogram and EcoMap is completed. Family sculpting means creating a live portrait of the family. In a family sculpture session, each family member takes turns to create a portrait of the family. Each family member physically arranges the other members of the family, including himself or herself. This exercise is done non-verbally, and the sculptor gives brief directions to facilitate the exact positioning of the members in the portrait. Before commencement of the sculpture, the social worker gives clear instructions about the nature of the portrait expected from the family. For example, scene at home when the head of the family comes fully drunk, and also the need to complete the picture even if the family members complain or object in between the sculpting process. Family sculpture gives the social worker an idea about the family relationships and the interactions. After the exercise, the social worker can ask each family member to give their feedback as to how they experienced doing that particular exercise. That is their position in the sculpture. Family sculpture is a sound diagnostic tool, and it provides an opportunity for therapeutic intervention. It's most effective when we are using it for issues related to communication and also interpersonal relationship. It's also a powerful tool to gain understanding about the feelings, reactions, moods, relationships and activities of individuals and family together. And as a shared experience, an atmosphere of trust, it promotes recognition of the family dynamics, which is constructive move towards intervention. For example, after creating awareness in the family members that scapegoating is taking place or over-involvement has resulted in dysfunction, the family is better able to accept the suggestions by the social worker for dealing with such problems, either in a short-term or a long-term intervention. And goals are set accordingly, either short-term or long-term. These tools, when combined with the astute observation of the strengths and limitation of the family system, they give social worker the basis for deciding whether the family can be mobilized to act on its own behalf or whether it should receive, I repeat, whether it must receive considerable support to move ahead and enables intervention planning to be responsive to the family needs. So, these mentioned tools are basically descriptive and they are quantitative and standardized, yet they are immensely useful for understanding an individual or a family unit, and they are very useful for formulating intervention strategies and also to evaluate the degree and quality of change in the clients or in the family. So, dear viewers, that's about the tools. Now, let us move on to the second section. As mentioned earlier, in this section we will talk about recording. Recording in casework, that is, when we are working with individuals, what is the significance of recording? Now, recording is an extremely important activity in social work practice, and recording is firmly grounded in values, ethics and philosophy of social work profession. Recording is based on the assumption that there is an essential connection between good recording and effectiveness of service, and as such, social work recording has been recognized as a vital component of professional and competent practice in all practice settings. History of social work also tells us that social work practitioners have consciously recognized and appreciated the importance and usefulness of recording in their interactions with the clients. Thus, recording has always been an integral part of social work practice, which includes social casework. So, what do we mean by the concept of recording? What's the meaning of recording? Recording refers to development and setting down of an account of why a service was requested and provided. It includes who, what, when, where, why and how of the problem, and also the accomplishment of the service, future work planned and termination. Recording is important and integral part of a casework procedure because it is an output of the activity of casework. The importance of recording lies both in the process as well as in the product. For instance, an individual who is planning to become a caseworker, the art of record writing is worth striving to develop and perfect, not only because case recording is an essential part, but it is becoming an important factor with increasing complexity of social treatment. And also because case record is fortunately or unfortunately considered as one of the important indexes of ability of a social worker. Now, what does recording do? what does recording consist of? What does it register? Recording basically registers facts, significant facts and evidence of judgments. And it also consists of decisions about the people who are involved, the problem situations, and it also describes about the reality of the helping situation, and it includes quantity and quality of the service that has been rendered and describes about the course of action that has been taken. Now, to understand it further, let's look at the definitions of recording. Now, the Social Work Dictionary way back in 1995, it defined recording as the process of putting in writing and keeping on a file relevant information about the client, the problem, the prognosis, the intervention, the progress of the treatment, the social, economic and health factors that contributed to the situation, and the procedures for termination or referral. Kegel described that social work records individually, they typify the client, the need, the situation and the service transaction. They link goals, plans and activities to the assessment of the client's need situation and to the resources available. And they also facilitate the delivery of services to or on behalf of the client. Through the process of making the record, which involves reviewing, selecting, analyzing and organizing information, and through the product, the record in itself becomes an important resource in communication about the case. So, a record literally means formally writing of an fact or a proceeding. When we use it as a verb, it refers to setting down in writing in any permanent form. Taking cues from this, we can define case record as an account of the casework proceedings. However, from the above statements, one should not conclude that case record is an easy, routine or a complex, simple task. And far from it, it's indeed a highly skilled and complex task. So what is the purpose? Having seen the definition, what is the purpose of social casework recording? Mainly, it provides accountability to the client, the organization, and also to the relevant legislation. And it's an evidence of the facts that have been gathered from our clients, the intervention done and the outcome. And it is a source of ongoing essential information about our client. And it also provides relevant information for future social work involvement and also continuity of care. And it gives us a picture about the role of a social worker in an interdisciplinary team. And obviously, it is documentation for the purposes of research, advocacy, reform and program evaluation. So, when you see all this about recording, what are the kind of records? What is the outwardly look of the kind of records that we maintain as social workers? They consist of different types. The forms of recording includes face sheets, intake formats, thematic forms, documents, reports of different kinds, audio and video recordings, case sheet, diagnostic summaries, filled-in assessment tools and others. Now let's look at the types of recording. First thing is process recording, and as the term itself suggests, it is a form of recording which is used frequently by the caseworker. In this type, the process of the interview is recorded. It is a detailed description of what transpired during the interview, and it's in a sequential manner in terms of the matters that have been discussed. It also includes significant reactions of the client and may have some verbatim reports too, verbatim inputs mainly. Then we move on to another type of recording called as summary recording. In this, a review or a recapitulation of the material that has already appeared in the record is done. It may be either topically arranged or maybe a condensed chronological narrative. And summary in social casework recording has been defined as a digest of significant facts in the client's history which has previously been recorded. So, summary record can be made for diagnostic purposes, periodical or during termination of a case. The other type of recording which we again see as a part of casework is called as verbatim recording. Verbatim recording is a reproduction of factual data as the individual's own words, that is, in the individual's own words. It is commonly used in casework because of its accuracy and objectivity. However, it should not become a mechanical procedure or reproduction of the information, because casework is indeed an important method, and it is an art that requires an intelligent selection and rearrangement of the material. So, as a part of training, or that is on becoming a social worker, verbatim recording may be of value to develop objectivity. Next, we also have something called as non-verbatim narrative recording. Non-verbatim narrative recording is still a predominant style of recording used by social workers. It is the style found in newspapers and magazines. It is the way we speak about our day-to-day events. It is the way a letter is written, or it is the ways in which we keep our diaries. These are all the examples of narrative form. Narrative form of recording is preferred because it is reporting acts of practical helpfulness, and it is also used to report about events and most collateral visits or conferences that we have about our clients. It may also be used for the contents of an interview in all instances, except when the process itself and user relationship have special significance. So, that is about recording. We have seen about the concept, meaning, and the importance of different types of recording. Now let's move on to the contents of an effective record. What should go essentially when we are noting down an effective case record? A variety of tools are used by caseworkers during the interview and collateral visits to collect relevant information for assessment and intervention. Tools for information, as we saw earlier, may include interview guides, Genogram, eco-map, network map, observation of the family dynamics, interactions, etc. Now, for the information that has been culled from all these sources, an ideal case record should essentially include the following information. Obviously, when we write records about our clients, we start with the identification details. It consists of details such as the name, age, sex, education, occupation, income, marital status, and address, along with the contact phone numbers if provided. And the next thing that we move on to is, when we are writing the record, we talk about the problem history of the client. We make a note of that. What were the major issues, complaints which were mentioned by the client? What was the history of the genesis of this particular problem? And the nature of the problem has to be written down chronologically. What were the help, support, sought from other sources, etc. That is the significant others. All these details have to be recorded in this particular section. Then attention must also be given to effect of the problem on the biological, social, occupational, and personal functioning of the client. So, all these details have to essentially go into the case record under the section problem history. Then we move on to the family history. This section should include details of the family origin of the client, details about his parents and siblings in terms of their age, education, occupation, marital status, economic status, medical history, and relationship with the client may be elicited. Family dynamics, interaction patterns, and the perception, that is in terms of their feelings, relations, and attitudes of the family members towards the problem, should also find a place in this section. Then we move on to the personal history. This section may include information about the early development, schooling, college, type of college, change of school, college if any. Predominantly, it should include details about the education history of the client's likes and dislikes, academic performance, participation in other activities, favorite teachers, subjects, role models, significant events, habits, say like drinking, smoking, any other addictions, etc., and hobbies. The marital history of the client may include information on age of the marriage, age at marriage, I repeat, whether it was a love or arranged marriage, consanguinity, age and personality of the spouse, preparation and expectations from marriage, compatibility with the in-laws, spouse and children, sharing of work, communication patterns, sex-related issues, stress, extended family, roles and responsibilities, support from family, friends, relatives, and others. History of the client should also include occupational details. That is, information about age of entry into a first job, the job satisfaction. And here we may make note of the working environment, whether the client has received any promotions, incentives, relationships with colleagues, etc., change of jobs, the income earned from the job, needs and income, spouse's attitude towards the job and the income earned, financial difficulties, and other issues, if any. Now, based on all this, the caseworker has to make social analysis and diagnosis, because this includes caseworkers' understanding about key areas of concern. What were the problems identified? What were the factors that related to these issues? In other words, this section is a summary of the nature of the problems, issues, and factors that were responsible for the presenting condition. And this is followed by a plan of management, which focuses on the line of management. And lastly, it consists of the casework intervention. Information under this section may include about the nature of rapport building, motivating the client, how was the contract established, how the information was gathered, and a detailed information about client's assessment of the problem, how the goals were identified, what were the services provided. And little information about the follow-up and termination is also important, because the client has to be prepared for termination. So we end with what are the essential prerequisites for an effective record. We have to maintain a source file. And second thing is, confidentiality is very, very important when we are noting down. And the assessment that we have done should essentially feature in this particular record. And the recording should be in such a format that it facilitates monitoring and evaluation and outcomes, and it should also lead to policy formation. So to conclude, or in other words to summarize, in this particular section we have looked at the importance of assessment tools. We have learnt about the importance of a genogram, eco map, and family sculpture. Then we went on to see the importance of recording, the prerequisites of an effective record, and what should go into the content of a record.